Hello, welcome to my channel, Another Bibliophile Reads. My name is Greg, and Brandon's Bookshelf has created the Philosophy of Reading tag. This is 20 questions about how reading is a philosophy. And that's a brand new tag, and I'm going to do it. It was an open tag created on his channel. Anyone who watches the original video is tagged. Let's do this. Question number 1. What is most important? A good character, plot, or message? All three can be critically important depending on what you're reading. Literary fiction really requires good characters. A lot of pulp fiction requires good plot, and lots of philosophical fiction or philosophy requires a good message, and you can't do by taking one of them away. Not permanently. I mean, you can read individual books just for one of those three, but all three are critically important for reading. Question number 2. Should one read books about ideas or opinions they disagree with? Yes, you should. I have just recently read a book called From a Taller Tower, and it is a book very much in favor of some sort of gun control. And I do favor some sort of gun control. But while reading that book, it became clear to me that I don't always understand the other side of that issue, and that I had to find a good book on that issue. Now, that's just one issue, but it's always important to read and understand the opposite end. Now, as it's been said elsewhere, once you truly understand an issue, do you need to continue reading the opposing views? Maybe not. Maybe enough just to keep in tune with what is going on other sides. And you don't have to read it just to hate read. Hate reading is a niche, I think, and it's not necessary. Question number 3. As tech advances, what do you think will be the role of books? Well, I have been an early user of ebooks. I started reading ebooks in 2002 with the Microsoft Reader on a handheld PDA. That was a Dell compact device. The screen was really no larger than the smallest of modern smartphones, but I did read quite a number of books on that device. And I'm also a listener of audiobooks. I started those in the 90s. So for me, technology in books includes print books, audiobooks, and digital books. If there ever is a different version of a book, I will probably try it, and I will probably like it. Some people have mentioned downloading books directly to the brain. I think that is a technology that I will not live to see, so I won't have to make that choice. But if that were available, I certainly would try it. And does that mean there's a future for print books? I don't know. Eventually, maybe not. Maybe it will become just a collector's item, but I will be there for whatever new technology comes around. Question number 4. How important are summaries, review, and art in your book choosing? Well, I do subscribe to the New York Review of Books every week, and I go through that almost every week. What I actually do not like are really in-depth reviews that try to show how knowledgeable the reviewer is about the subject and the book reviewed. I think a good book review is more like going into a restaurant and smelling the flavors of what's available. You don't have to truly understand and go that much into depth. Maybe that is useful after you have read the book and trying to get a more broad depth of what that book was about. But really, reviews should be short and sweet, saying, this is what it is, and if you like this kind of book, it's for you or not for you. Artwork, I have to admit that I like some artwork on covers. I like the old pulp covers, and if I have not mentioned it before, I will buy a book just for the old pulp covers. They're wonderful. And summaries, not really for me. I mean, I guess if you're just looking for a quick, succinct part, no, but that's not for me. Number 5, should one ever skim or scan a book? Not the way I read books. I basically read for entertainment or erudition. If I'm reading for education, and that means I'm seeking some sort of degree and need to be slightly knowledgeable about this subject, yes, I could see where scanning or skimming a book for your education would be permissible or a good idea. Although I would not want doctors skimming or scanning their textbooks on medicine if I have to go see them. So maybe I'm really not so much in favor of that one. Prompt number 6. Should reading always be enjoyable? At this stage in my life, I think yes. If I'm not enjoying a book, why continue with it? I'm retired. I don't have to prove anything to anyone else. I can just read or not read. And why should I read if it's not enjoyable? Question number 7. Is it important to be well read? It is important to me. There are some people out there it is not important at all. I will mention my brother-in-law. He once bragged that he had read 4 books after high school. And this is when he was in his early 40s. And 3 of them were John Grisham novels. Being well read to him is not at all important. I cannot convey the importance of being well read that I find to him. He will never listen. And honestly, I think people who are well read are more well-rounded. They are more open to new ideas, and they will make better citizens of whatever country they live in the long run. It is the people who do not read that I see can be very problematic sometimes. Just here in Virginia in the last election, one of the major voting issues was Toni Morrison's Beloved. Some parents felt that it was inappropriate for their children to be reading that book. Now, I have read that book. I thought it was a very good book. I do not personally rank it as a great book, as some people do, but it's a very good book. And I think it's a good book for people in high school to read. I know it was mentioned somewhere that in previous decades, A Red Badge of Courage by Stephen Crane was assigned to just about every high schooler to read. I have no problem with a high schooler reading Beloved. I think it'd be important. I think they can learn a lot of lessons from that. But I don't see it becoming, I see it as an issue with some people. Prompt number 8. What is your book buying process? Well, previously, I was addicted to Amazon Kindle books like streetwalkers are addicted to crack. If a book went on sale for $1.99 or $2.99 and it was on my list of books that I wanted to read, I would just buy it. Wait for some day, see if I read it. If not, well, it's $3 and who cares if you spent $3 and it's never used. It's not a lot of money. I was a little more careful with buying new paper books or print books, just because I have so many of those that I am running out of shelf space, and I do have a problem of getting rid of books. Even if I don't like them and don't intend to read them, I just don't like getting rid of them. Now, I have entered a challenge when I am not going to buy any more books until I've read 100 books. I have a whole video about that and you can check it out. So my book buying process has changed a little bit. Prompt number 10. Prompt number 9. What is your reading process? I'm not sure if I have a process to read. I said I have 3 main ways I read. I read in print, I read on ebook, and I read on audio. My process for audio is I am generally doing something else when I am listening to the audiobook. I'm either driving or walking or cleaning up around the house. I don't often just sit and read an audiobook and like I would a regular book. It's part of another process. Ebook, I have my Kindle, I have my iPad, and I just sit down and read. That's the same with a print book. Now, I do read more digital books than I do print books nowadays. Who knows with this book buying challenge or ban, maybe flipping over to print books for a while. But my process is to read a lot of ebooks. And I just sit down and read. I try to carve out some time where I'm just reading. But honestly, even though I'm retired, life is so busy, you read piecemeal a lot. Question number 10. How do you use what you read? I'm not sure I use what I read at all. It is more like the very act of reading and gathering knowledge is what I am doing it for. I don't necessarily have to use what I read. And really, except for BookTube, I have no venue to talk about books because most people in this world are not interested in books. Now, as I said, what I read can inform me to make better decisions in this world. So maybe that is just it. One of the claims is that reading good fiction makes you a better empathizer and a better person dealing with other people. Now, whether that's true or not, I don't know. But that's how I would use what I read. Question number 11. If you could download a book to your brain, would you still read? I think I've already answered that question in question number 3. Question number 12. What are your views on rereading a book? I really like to reread some books. Not every book needs to be reread. I think about the books that I have read the most in my life. That would be The Stranger by Albert Camus, A Confederacy of Dunces by John Kennedy Toole, The Time Machine by H.G. Wells. And those are the ones that I've read at least more than 4 times each. And when you reread, you are rereading a different book, even if the text is exactly the same, because you are never the same person after you've picked up a book and time has gone by. And so normally when I reread, there are multiple years between readings of books. I know my favorite book of 2021 was J.R. by William Gaddis. And I am doing a buddy read with Alan at Big Hard Books of Classics of J.R. in January. And that will probably be one of the rare instances when I reread the same book within 1 year. And maybe I should do a whole video about that when I am done. But yeah, reread books, reread the good books. It's quite enlightening. Question number 13. What makes a good book? A good book is what engages me. I often know when I've been reading a good book is when I want to talk about it with my wife over dinner. And I said, I read this piece of information in this book. I have to tell you about it. There's these fascinating characters in this book. I want to tell you about them. That's what makes a good book, is that when you feel compelled to discuss it with other people. Question number 14, what makes a bad book? A bad book is one that doesn't engage me, that you're reading it and you go, I am just not interested in reading this. Now, there are a number of different ways a book could make me uninterested. It could be a very conventional plot. It could be cliched characters. It could be a very bad writing style. But I'm going to mention one thing that I think that makes a bad book that will probably be quite controversial. I think when an author writes a book to be made into a movie, that is a bad book. If the author has an image of a movie in mind, that author should be writing a screenplay and not a novel. Let the novel be a novel alone, and to hell with the movie version. So I remember reading one book that, well, I didn't get very far. We're in the doctrine. In the little opening comments, the author says, if you're reading this book and you can imagine a good movie, I have done my job well. Well, no, I think that's a crappy job. Don't try to write to the movie. Write to the novel if you're writing a novel. Question number 15. How do you feel about not finishing a book? I am totally fine with not finishing a book. I have picked up a lot, and I'm saying this is not working for me, and why should I struggle to finish something? I'm not reading this book for any other reason than my own purposes. So why should I be compelled to finish? Just because someone else in this reading community loved this book and said it's great, but it's not working for me, I have no reason whatsoever to be forced to finish. And I am totally fine with a DNF status on that book. Question number 16. Should the author's personal life matter at all? No, it should not matter at all. I understand that this is a very hot topic with some people because some authors are dickheads, and you just have to get over that. I remember quite a few years ago, my wife and I were taking a long weekend in the Catskills, and we were staying at a very fancy B&B. And over breakfast, the innkeepers were saying, oh, what do you like to do? And I said, I love reading books. And the innkeeper said, oh, have you read any good books recently? And I mentioned that I had just finished the novel Everyman by Philip Roth. And the innkeeper got really quiet. And she said, Philip Roth was a guest here. He was a real asshole. And you could tell this innkeeper really disliked Philip Roth because he was an asshole. And everything that I have learned about Philip Roth confirms the fact that he was an asshole. He was also a very good writer. He was a misogynist, but he was still a good writer. Now, does his status as an asshole, his status as a misogynist, counteract that he was a good writer? I don't think it does. I understand why some people feel very strongly that they should not read books by people who are misogynists. I just don't agree with it. Especially with older authors who are dead, who lived in eras where it was more common to be a little more bigoted. It doesn't excuse it. It doesn't make the fact that it was okay to be slightly racist or slightly anti-Semitic way back when, but you have to overlook it a little bit. You just cannot say they don't fit what is the current standards and dismiss them. Because in 20 years, in 30 years, times will have changed. And the authors that are perfectly acceptable today will not be perfectly acceptable tomorrow. And tomorrow's readers will dismiss those authors. So, Toni Morrison. Maybe some future generations will dismiss her and say she's not right and never read her. That's wrong because she's a good author. And to my knowledge, she's never done anything wrong that I would consider problematic. But other people do find that. So I think it's important not to dismiss authors' personal lives. Now, I suppose there could be a rare case where there is a popular author and one day the police go into his basement and find a whole bunch of body parts strewn across his storage room. And he goes to jail and he continues to write books. Yeah, maybe not read his books then. Okay, there could be exceptions, but I wouldn't consider that a great likelihood. Question number 17. If you could only read one genre for the rest of time, what would that be? I don't think I could do it. I read too widely. I read literary fiction, I read genre fiction, I read nonfiction. So I would have a very hard time. Probably if you put a gun to my head and forced me to pick, I would pick literary fiction. But how do you define literary fiction? Some people say Raymond Chandler, who wrote mysteries, is a literary author. And I kind of agree with that. He can be both literary author and a genre author. It's just no way to pick that one out. Question number 18. Do you ever read a book without knowing anything about it? Sometimes I do just pick up books and read them. I don't necessarily read the front flaps very well or all the way through, because really, what's on a back flap other than very scant information? I know when I was in my mid-20s and working in a bookstore, a couple of clerks got together and we tried to do this, to pick a book that didn't have a cover on it or a back cover or the title printed on any of the interior pages, and see if you could enjoy a book not knowing what the title was, who the author was. It really didn't work out because there's not many books like that. It'd probably be a lot easier on ebook, although you'd probably have to make some adjustments to the text and circumvent DMR, so I don't think that even that's possible. But in theory, I think it'd be a great idea to read a book, not know the title, not know the author, and just come and say, was this a good book or was this a bad book? Just strictly on the text. Question number 19. What author, genre, series, or culture can you just not get into? Why? The two areas that I just cannot read much on are romance and young adult. I tried to read, well, I did read a romance novel once, and this was basically on a bet on a community bulletin, one of those, what did you call those when you logged onto the internet and you just had text and you wrote in community bulletin boards? Yeah, one of those, where you were challenged to read books outside your comfort zone. And you got assigned random people to pick a book for you. And the woman asked, would you dare to read a romance novel? And I said, yeah, I'll read a romance novel. And she picked out a romance novel for me. And that she understood men, and she gave me a romance that I guess in their terminology was a high spice romance, which basically meant they had a lot of naughty parts in the book. And I liked the naughty parts and didn't like the rest. The other one where I will really put my foot down and see if you can listen. I do not read YA. I have read the Harry Potter books. I have read the first of the Hunger Games, and I just cannot understand why adults are interested in books about teenagers and written for teenagers. I just don't get it. It's not interesting to me. I'm baffled. No, I will not read them. Question number 20. Do you think everyone should read? Why? Why, yes, I think everyone should read. I think I've touched on this before. I think reading makes you a better individual. It broadens your mind. It really doesn't matter what you read. You can read just fiction, biographies, philosophy. All that will improve your mind and make you a better person. I also understand that you cannot force that on people. I mentioned that my brother-in-law, he will never read a book other than the 3 that he's read since high school. Now, maybe since he last talked to him, he's read 4. Maybe he's read 5. He will never be a reader, and there's no way to make him into a reader. And as someone, I have to understand that that's just who he is and accept that. And what else can I do? It's up to me to tolerate him, not him trying to get him into what I love to do. Well, that is the end of the tag. I think this is a fabulous tag. I'm not gonna, no, I will tag a few individual people. I will tag Alan at Big Hard Books and Classics, and I will tag Miss Reads a lot. And I'll leave it at that. I'm pretty sure that they're already working on their versions, but if not, and you get to the end, and I'm really going to be surprised if anyone watches this to the end, you're tagged. Thank you very much, and have a good evening. Goodbye.